Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to care about everything? What people think, what they say, how they judge you, what might go wrong? Most people spend their entire life carrying emotional weight that doesn't even belong to them. And the truth is simple. The moment you stop caring about the wrong things, you finally free yourself to focus on the right ones. Today, we're breaking down the psychology of not caring, not as a way to disconnect from life, but to take your power back and build a mind that no longer bends for anyone's expectations. Let's get into it. Number one, not caring is a form of emotional discipline. Not caring is deeply misunderstood. Most people hear the phrase and imagine apathy, emotional coldness, or detachment from reality. But the psychology behind not caring has nothing to do with shutting down. It has everything to do with learning to control where your emotional energy flows. Emotional discipline means you stop pouring yourself into situations, people, and problems that do not deserve access to your inner world. It is the skill of choosing when to respond, when to remain silent, and when to detach entirely. You understand that your emotions are finite, and if you hand them out carelessly, you end up exhausted, drained, and disconnected from yourself. When you practice emotional discipline, you are not becoming less human. You are simply refusing to allow every external force to storm into your mind and take up space. Not caring in this psychological context is about developing the ability to notice your triggers without immediately reacting to them. It's about recognizing that not every problem requires your involvement and not every opinion requires your attention. You begin to rise above impulses, negative patterns, and old habits that once controlled you. Instead of being pulled into conflict, drama, or emotional turbulence, you begin to observe it from a distance. This distance is not disconnection, it is clarity. It is the mental space that allows you to think before you give parts of yourself away. Emotional discipline grows when you stop treating your feelings as reactions and start treating them as decisions. Over time, you start to understand how costly emotional engagement actually is. Caring too much about the wrong things creates confusion and emotional overload. It leads you to invest in people who drain you or situations that destabilize you. The discipline of not caring means becoming selective. It means asking yourself, does this matter? Does this align with my values? Will this matter in a week, a month, or a year? Does giving my attention to this elevate me or destroy my peace? These questions filter your reactions and refine your emotional instincts. You become more responsive and less reactive. You become grounded instead of scattered. As your discipline strengthens, you see how much of your life was controlled by external noise, opinions, expectations, judgments, assumptions, and pressures that never aligned with your identity. When you stop caring about those things, you don't lose compassion or humanity. You simply reclaim authority over your internal state. You gain the ability to remain calm where you once collapsed, to stay centered where you once felt pulled, and to prioritize what truly matters instead of being consumed by what does not. Number two, detachment helps you see life more clearly. Detachment is not about withdrawing from life or shutting down emotionally. It is about creating enough mental space to see situations without distortion. When you're emotionally entangled, every problem feels personal, every setback feels catastrophic, and every comment feels like an attack. Detachment removes you from the emotional fog that makes everything seem bigger than it really is. It gives you the clarity to separate what is actually happening from what your emotions are exaggerating. When you step back, you start to see reality as it is, not as your fears or insecurities paint it. This clarity becomes a form of strength because you're no longer reacting impulsively or allowing temporary emotions to shape permanent decisions. You start interpreting situations with a calmer mind and a more stable perspective. When you practice detachment, you begin to recognize how much of your stress came from over-identifying with things that were never fully under your control. You realize how much mental energy you were wasting worrying about outcomes you couldn't predict, people you couldn't change, or circumstances that weren't your responsibility. Detachment teaches you to hold life with an open hand instead of a clenched fist. You allow things to be what they are instead of forcing them into what you wanted them to be. This shift doesn't make you passive. It makes you more strategic. You stop trying to fight every battle, solve every problem, or carry every burden. You pick your priorities with intention instead of reacting to every external demand. This clarity also extends to relationships. When you are too attached, you tend to ignore red flags, tolerate disrespect, or cling to situations that drain you. Detachment allows you to see people's behavior without emotional bias. You're able to identify patterns, question motives, and understand dynamics that were once blurred by emotional dependency. Instead of desperately trying to hold on, you begin to evaluate whether something adds value or simply takes from you. You gain the courage to walk away, not because you're indifferent, but because you finally see the truth without emotional interference. As detachment grows within you, your worldview changes. You stop confusing intensity with importance. You stop treating every inconvenience like a crisis. You stop allowing emotions to run your life. With detachment, you respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. You observe before you judge. You think before you engage. You choose before you commit. And through this process, life becomes clearer, lighter, and easier to navigate because your mind is no longer clouded by emotional overwhelm. Number 3, people pleasing is psychological self sabotage. People pleasing is one of the most subtle yet destructive patterns a person can fall into. On the surface, it looks like kindness, compassion, and cooperation, but underneath it is a deep fear of rejection and a constant need for validation. When you live to please others, you slowly disconnect from yourself. You start ignoring your own needs, your own boundaries, your own discomfort, all because you are terrified that saying no might disappoint someone. This pattern becomes psychological self sabotage because every time you silence your own voice to keep someone else comfortable, you reinforce the belief that your needs matter less than theirs. Over time, this conditioning shapes your identity, turning you into someone who survives on approval instead of authenticity. The most damaging part of people pleasing is how gradually it happens. You don't wake up and decide to betray yourself. You do it piece by piece. You agree when you want to decline. You stay when you want to leave. You smile when you want to speak up. You shrink so others don't feel threatened. You tolerate behaviors that drain you because you're scared of conflict or abandonment. You convince yourself that sacrificing your comfort keeps the peace, but the truth is that it only destroys your inner peace. What begins as an attempt to be liked or accepted eventually becomes emotional suffocation. You lose your ability to say what you think, express what you feel, or choose what you want, because your entire sense of safety becomes attached to how others respond to you. People pleasing also damages relationships more than it protects them. When you mold yourself to fit people's expectations, you invite relationships where you are valued for how much you give, not for who you are. The moment you try to set boundaries, people who benefited from your lack of them push back. That reaction alone reveals how the dynamic was never healthy. People pleasing attracts takers, manipulators, and emotionally demanding individuals because they sense your willingness to overextend yourself. And the more you give without receiving, the more resentment grows inside you, not just toward others, but toward yourself for allowing it. Psychologically, people pleasing is a form of self abandonment. It trains your mind to equate approval with survival and disapproval with danger. It keeps you stuck in emotional dependency, always scanning for signs that someone is upset or disappointed. When your worth becomes tied to how well you meet others' expectations, you lose touch with your own identity, your values, and your intuition. You become a mirror reflecting what others want rather than a person living by your own truth. Number 4, your self-worth dictates what you care about. Your self-worth quietly shapes every decision you make, every boundary you set, and every situation you tolerate. It determines what absorbs your attention, what you chase, and what you walk away from. When your self-worth is strong, you naturally become selective about what you care about because you understand that your time, energy, and emotional space are not free commodities. You stop giving unlimited access to people who exhaust you and situations that shrink you. You no longer feel obligated to explain yourself to those who misunderstand you or prove yourself to those who doubt you. A healthy sense of self-worth makes you more grounded, more intentional, and far less reactive. You care about things that align with your values rather than things that feed your insecurity. When your self-worth is low, the opposite happens. You end up caring too much about everything that shouldn't matter. You care about being liked, being accepted, being praised, being validated. You care about opinions that should carry no weight. You care about fitting in even when it costs you your identity. Your emotional energy becomes scattered because you invest in anything that gives you temporary reassurance. This often leads to chasing approval, tolerating disrespect, and staying in environments that undermine your value. You start believing you're responsible for keeping everyone else comfortable, even at the expense of your own peace. Low self-worth convinces you that you must earn love, earn respect, earn belonging, and earn basic consideration, so you care deeply about the wrong things because you think they define your worth. But once you recognize your value, everything shifts. You begin to understand that what you care about is a reflection of how you see yourself. You stop taking things personally because you understand that someone else's behavior is a reflection of them, not you. You stop trying to convince people of your worth because you no longer need their validation to feel secure. This internal shift changes your emotional priorities. You start caring about growth instead of approval. You care about peace instead of popularity. You care about boundaries instead of pleasing everyone. And most importantly, you care about how you treat yourself rather than how others treat you. Your self-worth becomes the filter that determines whether something deserves your emotional investment or not. The higher your self-worth, the less you tolerate chaos, disrespect, or inconsistency. You become more protective of your energy because you finally understand its value. And as your view of yourself strengthens, the list of things you care about becomes smaller, clearer, and far more aligned with the life you are trying to build. Number 5, indifference is power. When used intentionally, indifference, when used intentionally, is not about apathy or emotional numbness. It is a conscious strategy that protects your peace and redirects your energy toward what truly matters. Most people react to everything around them, every insult, every opinion, every shift in someone else's mood. This constant emotional engagement leaves them drained, reactive, and easily manipulated. But intentional indifference allows you to step back from that cycle. It creates a psychological barrier that prevents external chaos from influencing your internal state. When you choose indifference, you're not ignoring reality. You're choosing not to let it control you. You're choosing to focus on what you can influence rather than chasing after what you cannot. This form of emotional restraint becomes power because it gives you a level of calm that others cannot disrupt. The real strength of intentional indifference lies in how it neutralizes manipulation. People who seek control or influence often rely on emotional reactions: guilt, fear, frustration, or insecurity. When you stop responding to those triggers, their power over you dissolves. They can no longer use your emotions against you. Instead of being thrown off balance by people's behavior, you maintain your stability regardless of what they do. This sends a message without saying a word. Your peace is not negotiable. Your boundaries are not flexible. Your emotional state is not up for public influence. And because of this, people who once pushed your limits suddenly recognize that they no longer have access to the same emotional levers they used before. Intentional indifference also serves as a filter that clarifies your priorities. When you stop reacting to everything, you become more aware of what truly deserves your attention. You stop wasting emotional energy on petty arguments, meaningless conflicts, or people who drain you without giving anything back. You stop feeling obligated to explain yourself or defend your choices to people who misunderstand you. Instead, you conserve your energy for things that align with your values and contribute to your personal growth. This shift creates a more stable, grounded version of you, someone who thinks before reacting, who observes without absorbing, and who responds with intention rather than emotion. Over time, this type of indifference becomes a form of self-protection that strengthens your sense of identity. You stop letting external circumstances determine your emotional temperature. You become the steady force in your own life, unaffected by impulsive reactions or external chaos. And as you develop this emotional detachment, you start making decisions from a place of clarity rather than urgency, confidence rather than insecurity, and inner strength rather than emotional turbulence. Number 6, freedom comes from letting go of control. Freedom often begins where control ends. The need to control everything, outcomes, people, timing, reactions, and circumstances, is rooted in fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of loss, fear of disappointment, fear of being hurt again. This fear convinces you that if you just manage everything perfectly, nothing will fall apart. But the truth is that the more you try to control, the more trapped you become. Your mind becomes hypervigilant, constantly scanning for threats, constantly predicting what could go wrong. You become tense, anxious, and overwhelmed because you are carrying responsibilities that were never meant to be yours. Letting go of control doesn't mean giving up. It means releasing the illusion that everything must bend to your will in order for you to feel safe. It is the decision to stop micromanaging life and start trusting that not everything needs to be handled by force. When you let go of control, you create space for clarity and emotional balance. You stop obsessing over every detail, every possibility, every potential outcome. Instead of trying to predict everything, you begin to experience life as it unfolds. You learn to respond rather than preemptively defend yourself against imagined scenarios. This shift doesn't make you careless, it makes you wiser. You conserve emotional energy by focusing only on what you can genuinely influence: your actions, your choices, your attitude, instead of exhausting yourself trying to manage what belongs to others. You begin to accept that uncertainty is inevitable, and in that acceptance, your mind finally relaxes. This freedom allows you to engage with life without constantly bracing for impact. Letting go of control also transforms your relationships. When you no longer feel responsible for managing how others think, feel, or act, you stop carrying emotional burdens that aren't yours to bear. You stop trying to fix people, save people, or shape them into versions that match your expectations. You allow others to be accountable for themselves. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop interfering in ways that drain you and prevent the other person from growing. You learn to set boundaries without forcing outcomes. You learn to express your needs without trying to manipulate the response. You learn to walk away when something is no longer healthy without needing to control the narrative. As you release the need to control, you begin to trust yourself more deeply. You trust your resilience, your ability to adapt, your inner strength. You stop clinging to rigid expectations and start embracing the flow of life with a calmer, more grounded mindset. You no longer chase certainty. You create stability within yourself. You no longer cling tightly to outcomes. You move confidently toward what feels aligned. And in that shift, you discover a freedom that comes not from controlling life, but from allowing it to move naturally while you remain steady within yourself. The real power isn't in caring less, it's in caring intentionally. Protect your peace, choose your battles, and invest your energy where it actually matters. When you stop letting the world pull you in every direction, you finally step into who you were meant to be.